Welcome to another edition of Coffee with the Goose, where we talk about things that are interesting, fascinating, and irritating. Glad you could join me again. Yes, I'm the Goose. Got some interesting boxing information to talk about today. I don't have a cup of coffee with me, however, but trust me, I just had some coffee, so yeah, playing the game. Anyhow, going to talk about Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr. and a little Terrence Crawford as well. As you know, we're coming off the latest big welterweight title fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia, won decisively by Mr. Spence, a 12-round unanimous decision, and Spence, in my opinion, won 10 of those 12 rounds, so it was a gimme. He was going to win that anyhow, as great as Danny Garcia was. Of course, Manny Pacquiao watched that fight from home, and afterwards sent out his congratulations, and then through one of his managers said, you know what, I want this Errol Spence Jr. now. Well, good for him. I know I speak for many boxing fans when I say I want this fight too. But let's back up a little bit. What about Terrence Crawford? Doesn't he deserve a chance at unifying the welterweight title? Yes and no. You know, what people deserve and what happens is often not necessarily the same, but life is not fair, right? I'll repeat what I've said many times. In the boxing world, what counts in making big fights is money. That's the bottom line. How much money are the promoters and the managers and the big dogs going to make? That's all that matters. And as much as we want to see different fights, you know, you could wish upon a star all day long, and that's not going to happen. You know, much to the displeasure of Terrence Crawford and his fans. Terrence Crawford, as you know, great fighter. I think he's 33 now, from Omaha, Nebraska, undefeated, coming off a big win over former champion Kell Brook. And he is, you know, a great fighter, a left-hander. He hits from both sides of the plates, as they say, and he's a handful for anybody. But unfortunately, through no fault of his own, I know I've said this before, but I got to keep reminding you, he is not going to get the big money fight. Why? Because he doesn't have the backing of enough fans. Again, it's money. As great as Terrence Crawford is, his resume, again, through no fault of his own, is just doesn't measure up. Of course, it doesn't measure up to Pacquiao's. Nobody's does, but it doesn't even come close to Errol Spence Jr. The real fault lies with his promoter, Bob Arum, of Top Rank, who, of course, used to be Manny Pacquiao's boss. So, sorry, Terrence Crawford. He is the WBO welterweight champion, and as much as we want to see him fight Pacquiao or Errol Spence, it's probably not going to happen. Now, again, after Errol Spence Jr. defeated Danny Garcia recently, Manny Pacquiao has hinted, not so much a hint, but he actually said it through his one of his promoters, Manny Pacquiao Promotions, Sean Gibbons, said, yeah, Pacquiao wants this fight now, and that would kind of solidify the welterweight crown. Of course, Danny Garcia had the crown years ago. Errol Spence Jr. now the WBC and IBF title holder. Pacquiao has a title as well, so that'd be a great fight. Now, why would it be great? Not just because they're both great champions and great fighters, but one of the reasons I think it would be a great fight is they're both left-handers. So it's really hard to kind of figure out who the favorite would be. If you know anything about the conundrum of facing a left-hander, I, being a left-hander, can remind you, and it's not just boxing, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's many sports. You're just not used to seeing your opponent use predominantly their left hand. You're not used to the angles. You're not used to a lot of different things, and it comes as a surprise. And unless you're great and well-schooled, it's going to confuse you and probably cost you a victory and maybe even your belt. Now, Manny Pacquiao, of course, a left-hander, has fought left-handers in his career. I don't remember. I can't give you any names because there aren't that many great left-handers, right? But he along with Errol Spence Jr. as left-handed. And Spence, he's a tough guy. Not just left-handed, but very skilled and a real animal in the ring. We saw that in his victory over Sean Porter last year, and we saw more of that in his victory over Danny Garcia. As great as Garcia is, he just didn't match up well, not just because Spence is a lefty, but Spence is just more skilled than he is. And what will happen when we see two left-handers go at it? I don't know. And I want to get your opinion and hear what you have to say, because it's something we just don't see much of, and it'll be a great matchup. Probably going to happen in 2021, according to Sean Gibbons of Manny Pacquiao Promotions. And, Errol Spence Jr. wants this too. Another reason I like Spence, by the way, not just because he has the skills and has the toughness and the badass attitude. He is two other reasons. Number one, he came back from that horrific car crash, a stupid move on his part, but hey, he survived. And he looks like he fully recovered, at least mentally, and showed that against Danny Garcia. Plus, I like him because he is a family man. He's got lots of love in his heart. You've seen that online, his dealing with his baby. He's a great guy. And he is very respectful. I love it when I see trash talking, and that's common with boxing because, hey, you're going to, going to knock each other out, right? But Spence, to his credit, understands Manny Pacquiao's place and his legendary status, and he knows enough to, take his place. Not to the point where he's like, oh, there's no way I can beat this guy. He really believes he can beat Manny Pacquiao, but he understands that Pacquiao, and he said this, Pacquiao is a legend, and he has the right, he's earned it, he has the right to fight whoever he wants. So he doesn't have to fight me. He doesn't have to fight Terrence Crawford. He's got that status. He can do whatever he wants to do because he's an 8-division world champion, and he's still at the age of soon to be 42, a world champion in 4 different decades, which is astounding, and maybe even still the most feared fighter on the planet, pound for pound. Speaking of pound for pound, before I let you guys go, it still remains when you talk to or read different publications, people still rank Pacquiao third behind, pound for pound, behind Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. That's your right. And, you may know a little bit more about boxing than I do. But nobody, at least not Ring Magazine, and who did I read? Saw online, Rummy's Corner. Even Rummy, and he doesn't claim to be a boxing expert, give him credit for that, but he points out that everybody you talk to thinks Manny Pacquiao is number 3 behind Spence and Terrence Crawford. But Rummy, in Rummy's Corner online, actually said that Terrence Crawford is more accomplished. Really? I don't understand where you get that information from. How do you reach that conclusion? I told you earlier, his resume doesn't come even close to Pacquiao's. Even in recent years, you can say Pacquiao hasn't fought a lot of big dogs in the last couple of years. But has Terrence Crawford? No, he hasn't. So how do you get off saying Terrence Crawford is more accomplished than Manny Pacquiao? That's a joke. There's no way. One of my favorites, Johnny Boy Boxing, the name of his YouTube channel is Johnny's Fight Palace. And I love Johnny because for 2 reasons. Number one, the guy knows his business. And number 2, he's going to tell you. He doesn't care if he breaks your heart or hurts your feelings. Put on your big boy pants and take it. You got a problem with Johnny Boy's opinion? Well, let him know. Don't just sit there and complain because he tells you flat out what he thinks is going to happen. As a matter of fact, one of his latest shows, he said, it was hilarious because, again, he just lays it out. He said, not only, and whether you believe it or not, and I'm not sure, but Johnny knows a little more than I do about boxing. Johnny's Fight Palace. Johnny says in no uncertain terms that Manny Pacquiao would destroy, dehumanize Errol Spence Jr. I love it. I don't know whether he's right or not. I'd love to see the fight. We'll see. But Johnny in Johnny's Fight Palace, love the guy, and I learn a lot just watching his fight. So watching his show. So we'll see. I love to, do a little research, love to watch the fights, like to compare the different fighters. And I'm excited, as all of you folks are, when we get the big fights coming up. And it looks like we're going to get that big fight with Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr. sometime in 2021. Stick with me. We'll continue to update you on the latest in the welterweight boxing division with Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford, or whoever else wants to step in and fight these big dogs, all right? That's it for this edition of Coffee with the Goose. I want to wish you guys all the best, and certainly your good health, and all the blessings from God. Merry Christmas to all of you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks again for all of you folks who subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon, all right? Take care.